Security was one of the most earliest pioneer in the area of cybersecurity in Korea. It was 16 years ago that we first developed our software, the Security Information and Event Management Solution. And it's one of its kind to be developed in Korea, which is to say that no other Korean company has locally developed this product. So currently we are obviously we have already over 600 projects completions under our belt, and we have a lot of experience, and we have a lot of references, especially in the public sector, with our software. So to be a little more specific, IGLOO Security, we've been on the scene in Korea for over 16 years, and we've been incorporated in 1999 and listed in Kosdaq. And we have headquarters in Seoul, and we have another subsidiary in Tokyo, Japan. We have over 600 employees, and our annual turnover is approximately $60 million. And as you can see, our business area is concentrated on the SIEM solution, but we also provide services related to that solution, which is managed security service. And we have recently developed a physical security information management system, which is called Liger One. So going on to our product lineup, as you can see, this is the internet, and this is the network, typical network topology for a business environment. Starting from the portal area, we have a solution called IS Portal. We have solutions called IS ESM, which is basically your SIEM product, plus endpoint products as well. So we do cover the whole network range for information security. That Liger One is a very comprehensive product which can connect to all these different types of system which can make up, let's say, an example of a building. For example, you need a very high security building, then obviously you need to be connected not just with information systems, but also with systems like power, lighting, climate control. All of these can be connected to the Liger to give you a complete overview and control of the whole system and security for the whole physical area. Going over our domestic and basically customers, as you can see, our customers, a lot of it is the public sector, a little over 50%. We are also into education, military, financial sector, and just general overseas. And our market share in the area of SIEM and managed security service is approximately 78% within Korea. So we are the leader in this area. And here you can see our major customers. The NCIA, if you know, is the government integrated data center of Korea. We have GS Caltex, and we have many customers here, which you will recognize, but most of these tend to be government agencies because government tend to be more interested in cybersecurity. For overseas references, I just gave a short list of 3 countries. However, I will be going into specific case studies later on to give you more details, but just to top it off, for example, in Ethiopia, this project was completed this year, early this year. We established a security operating center. I think it's very similar to the incident management center that the ICI wants to develop. And we delivered not just the center, including the software and hardware, we also delivered training on management and operation of the SOC in totality. So here are some of the products that were provided, and the duration of the project was approximately 2 years. For the Rwanda case, it's similar, and it is in the second phase. For the Rwanda, we're collaborating with KT, and we're working as solution provider for KT. And the security is part of the total package that we are currently working with the Rwanda government to implement. Obviously, the duration has been 22 months, but this has been going on to the second phase, and we'll be probably working a lot longer. And of course, Morocco. This was delivered a few years ago, but we delivered the solutions for the Moroccan CERT. So I wanted to start basically with the framework for national information security, because this is where it all starts, and I haven't started the second year project yet with ICI. So before beginning, maybe I thought I'd like to introduce our, let's say, how we analyze your situation and what we would like to offer as our solution. But I think introducing the Korean case will be a good guideline for you to understand. So basically, for the Korean national information security, this is the organizational framework. We have the president, we have the National Security Council, and it's divided into three sectors, which is the public sector, private sector, and the military. So we're not responsible, obviously, for the military sector, but mostly it's the private and the public sector. And all of these framework have been developed under the legal Act, which is Act on the Protection of Information and Communication Infrastructure. And we are basically protected by something called the National Cybersecurity Center, which is under the Intelligence Service of Korea. While this is the national framework, if we look a little closely into each sector, let's take a look at the security defense of the public sector. This NIS, this is the National Intelligence Service of Korea. It's something like CIA. They have the NCSC, which is the National Cybersecurity Center, at the top, and this NCSC is above something called ISACs. It's regional security centers at ministerial level. So, for example, we have the Ministry of Government Administration and Home Affairs, or the Ministry of Finance. They each run their own security monitoring services. And under each of these ministries, they have their own specific areas of expertise where the actual detailed, let's say, security monitoring and issues are dealt with. So this is how it's basically structured. And actually it's pretty much identical for the private sector, except that at a national level, it is the Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning who uses an organization called KISA, the Korea Internet Security Agency, to basically monitor the basic ISACs of the private sector. And each sector obviously have their own system of security, information security. So once we understand this three-layered structure, then we can go on to see what kind of activities that goes on here. And basically, the top-level CERTs, obviously, the computer emergency response teams, are the NCSC for the public sector and KISA for the private sector for us. I believe that you have CERT RO just underneath us, and they would probably be doing similar activities that these organizations are doing. So basically, they distribute rules, distribute information, analyze and monitor nationwide situation. So it's basically a very big national system here. And this is supported by the industry CERTs. Basically, they are under each ministries, and they are specifically responsible for their own sectors. So they can determine the protection level, establish standards and procedures, and monitor the organizations of the industry. And underneath this industrial protective level, we have the actual unit CERTs. Under each of these industries, they are the actual operators of security devices. They actually monitor the suspicious activities, and response to an incident, and apply the distributed rules and blacklisted IP that is distributed through the top-level search. So this is basically our national cyber defense framework and structure. It took us more than 15 years to develop the kind of national structures that we have today. So it's not something that that takes maybe 1 or 2 years just to simply wrap it up and slap it on everybody and hope it works. And as you can see here, for example, at the beginning, we had to have a legal framework, which is to say it's not something that you ask nicely. Okay, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? That will never work. You have to have a forceful legal chains to make sure that each person is doing what they're doing. And you have to have the command center. And our command center is the National Council, the National Cybersecurity Council Center, established here. And then after that, we developed a presidential decree, which is to say that, well, this is an act which is very broad, and it may or may not contain the specific action plans that you need to operate a CERT. Well, here, this regulation on national CERT security management has the detailed rules, what kind of activities, they have divided responsibilities and roles. So basically, this decree here, it forms the basis of actual activities that need to go on. And this has been revised at least a few times during its enactment. This is the overall framework for national information security. This is a little more centered on, let's say, hardware-oriented stuff. Basically, when we look at, when we analyze the level of let's say cybersecurity in each country, what we do is we divide it into, in totality, maybe 5 different sections. The first one is the Security Operations Center. Basically, is the Cyber Command Center that is the head of everything. So all information is aggregated to this center here. And we look at the International Gateway. Anyways, for example, I think this would be your CERT RO right under us. Anyways, we look at the International Gateway, the ISPs, for example, your telcos. We would have to see what kind of information, how much of that information flows back and forth. We look at the national network. It's basically the backbone infrastructure within your own country. We look at government agencies. And what kind of network system do they have? Do they have a separated physical network from the private sector, or are they integrated? What type of system do you separate your public sector from your private sector? And of course, the critical infrastructure, which are oil, gas, or transportation, and other types of utilities. These are not exactly the elements of cybersecurity, but we have to look into also your existing IT environment and the domestic and international CERT cooperation. So basically, no CERT is an island. All the CERTs will be communicating with other CERTs in the regional area and worldwide as well. And here I'm just outlining the different types of tasks for each of these elements that make up the national cybersecurity. So basically, SOC, I would like to say that it's composed of technology, infrastructure, and proper training for each of its area. So you need technology for monitoring, surveillance, analysis, detection, and all of that, and the proper infrastructure plus the training. As I mentioned, we have to look into the international gateway, monitor illegal or harmful foreign sites, analyze, manage traffic, detect harmful traffic from abroad. These are the kind of tasks that need to be carried out. For the national backbone network, obviously, it's similar to the international gateway, but the location, let's just say, the venue would be within your own local networks. And government agency, how do you provide your services? Is there a reliability of government service with monitoring activities? And do you provide defense against web application-based attacks, and so on and so forth? For the critical infrastructure, it's a little different, as mentioned before. Normally, the utility sector uses the SCADA network system. Obviously, you have to secure that, and you have to secure digital control and measurement system that go with the SCADA system. So basically, this is the how we break down and how we analyze the level of national cybersecurity within any country. So it's a very general overview. Taking a little different approach to looking at the national information security, I would say these are some of the typical network topology for each of the elements. So, for example, Security Operations Center, the International Gateway, National Backbone, and Government Network. Basically, the purpose of each of these networks are a little different. For Security Operations Center is to recognize national cyber attacks and respond promptly. For International Gateway and National Backbone, they do have a similar purpose, which is to protect services from cyber attacks. And the government network is to protect government services and websites. So this is just an example that of each of the elements that make up the network. So I would like to talk a little more about the SOC because that's so central. I think the other elements basically already you certainly have an understanding, and it should be it's a role that's done by other people, but basically the national cybersecurity will be taken care of by SOCs, the Security Operations Centers, and there are various roles here that do perform these things, and the priorities are different. Here what I've done is I've analyzed the kind of roles that you need for national cybersecurity, and I've determined exactly what they are, what they do, and prioritized these roles, and I matched it up with the tasks that I showed you before. So basically, to protect the international gateway, for example, you have to prevent cyber attacks originating from foreign locations, and it's about the fourth highest as far as priorities goes. So what is the Security Operations Center? I would like to say it's three things: technology, process, and people, and you need a balance of these three elements. None is more important than the others, meaning that just because you have technology doesn't mean that without proper process, even with proper training, trained people, you won't have a good working SOC. So the important thing is to have a good balance between these three elements. Obviously, process, you need to have contextual response, systematic monitoring, and rapid propagation. Technology, you need all the various systems that make the SOC work. And people need to be skilled, and they need to have continuous training. And let's look at the benefits of the SOC. So if you have one, what's so good about it? Well, going one by one, as I mentioned, there's no beginning, no end, which is why I used a circle to describe these three elements. You can view the current maturity and capability of security operation, optimized process for monitoring and managing threats, and rapid propagation and dissemination of process and information. And your people will obviously be skilled. They will be able to protect critical data and ensure safety of the users on the cyber area and assist your management. For technology, proper technology will give you improved visibility for threats and better response against risks, respond to changing compliance requirement, and systematic monitoring and real-time response. So how does that work out in SOC? Well, this is basically the work process of what I would call the CERT activities, basically. But this is the common process for a SOC. You monitor and you detect, and you respond to the incident or event that triggered the detection, and you notify to your colleagues for action or non-action, whichever may be the case, and investigate and perform analysis of this event, and in the end, you can prevent future attacks of similar kind by recovery. Basically, this type of work is pretty repetitive, actually, and you can see from here that these activities, when an attack happens, let's say there's an incident, and is it an attack or not? If it's an attack, you'll have to respond to it, and at the same time, you have to enhance the rules through analytical process and optimize these rules and apply it to monitoring, and then which will be applied to the attack. But at the same time, again, the response, you have to also look at the vulnerability issues, remove the vulnerability, and prevent future similar attacks. But if it's not an attack, obviously it was a false alarm, which means that you'd have to optimize your rules. So a single event, whether or not it was an attack, creates a chain of events that needs to be carried out. Obviously, from one attack, or one possible attack, let's say, there are many different types of activities going on within the SOC. So it's very important that these different elements within the SOC work together in a collaborative manner to efficiently develop and prevent cyber threats.